might be a time limit on it.
All right, it hit 30 minutes right then.
Thank you. So we talked about primacy, which is for our highly resistant audiences, where you're giving your strongest arguments first. Recency for those audiences that are already receptive to you. And then we talked about Monroe's motivated sequence, which is those 5 steps. And we're familiar with that because that's used in infomercials a lot. Okay. Does anybody need to take notes from here to jot down ideas as far as what your persuasive arguments, just for a couple minutes? All right, then let's move on. We'll just keep on moving forward. Now this is the classical approach to persuasion, ethos, logos, and pathos. This is Comp 101 right here. So if have you had a Comp 101? Okay, a few of you have. So this should be very familiar to you. So let's just quickly define what these are. These are something that's, the more you use, the more persuasive you'll be, but you have to be very ethical with how you use these. So what is ethos?
Ethics.
Ethics, okay. And I'm going to come back and I'm going to talk about that in a lot more detail. But it's ethics, it's who you are, it's your moral code. You can't fake it. It's pervasive in every part of you. What's logos?
Logic.
Logic. So this is actually the bulk of what we've been teaching here. You know, does this make sense? Are you providing the evidence in order to create something that's persuasive? Is your research credible? And then what's pathos? This one's the trickiest one to remember. There's a couple of ways to remember this. You can think of it like passion or empathy.
Persuasive.
It is the emotional appeal. And what I want to say about this last category in emotions is, and you know, because I've shared with you this, that this is something that I study a lot about. Emotions in themselves, it's important that you show your emotions in your persuasion. There's nothing more boring than having a great topic, or disappointing, than having a great topic and somebody that's afraid to show their emotions. Now, this is not meant to be used in an unethical way. Showing passion for your topic is great. Okay, so Shayla, you're going to be talking about diets. This is something that you're passionate about because we know this. This is your career. And you want that to shine through in your persuasion. You know, if it's supplements, if it's something that you're passionate about, that should come through. Instead of, I'm here to tell you why education is important. That's not going to work for an audience. You know, I'm here to tell you why education is so important. It's a huge value of mine, and I'm excited to tell you about this new thing, whatever it is. Allow your emotions to shine through. That doesn't mean to use them in a manipulative way. Now, sometimes, and this will come out when we talk about fallacies, but trying to guilt people into doing something, that's unethical. That's not effective in the long run. The other thing that I'll say about using emotions is if you're using something that is close to your heart, that you're not sure how you'll react in front of an audience, I would say wait until you know how you'll react in front of an audience. So I've seen several students that have taken a topic that they're highly passionate about, and they know they can barely keep it together when they're talking to somebody else about this topic. It's usually one of the heavy hitter topics. And then they'll get to an audience. I had, and I felt really bad for her, a student, she was talking about child abuse. And she became so upset during her presentation, she couldn't stop crying. Okay, and that, I mean, there was not a person in the room that didn't have a heart for her. But she wasn't able to present. And so that's something that you need to know, how you react when you bring in some of these topics. So I usually coach students at, just to make sure that they're going to choose something that's really close to their heart that could become one of those topics to be careful if that's the case with me. You definitely want your emotions to shine through, but you also, you don't want to use it in a manipulative way. You want to be able to handle your emotions when you're presenting, because the point is to deliver a message. Okay, we've talked about this a lot. Let's talk about morals and ethics. So, what do you think morals and ethics are? Okay, it's between what's right and wrong.
Almost like a belief.
Okay, and we talked about this last week, because we know that when we talked about values are the right and wrong. But, how do we get to that point? And we also know that we can have similar values and express it completely differently. So how do we get down to this thing of ethics? And your book has some examples that it makes sense. Ethics, you can see this as a perception. It comes two ways. It's not only who you are, not only in public, but in the privacy of your home. But it's also how people perceive you. So if, let's say that I do all the right things, and I make all the right facial expressions, and I say things that should sound right, quote unquote. But if there's something about me that you don't trust, okay, then I don't have this. I haven't gained credibility with you. So how do we create ethics? How do we have that perception? How do we create that in ourselves as a truth so that others can see it? How do we get to be that person that somebody says, I only take, let's say, my car to you because I trust you? How many of you have that mechanic in your life that's the only person you'll go to? A couple of you do. That didn't happen overnight. Or that doctor that says, you can go get a second opinion, and you're like, no, I don't even want to, because I've been going to you forever. So how do we get to that? Personally, our personal lives.
Experience.
It takes time. It takes time to get there. In the meantime, you have to be supported in other ways. And that's, the late Stephen Covey said, it took 10 years for you to be basically an expert in your field before you could be standalone in this. Before people saw that. If you look at organizations, one of the things that they will boast about is that they've been in business longer than 10 years. And Wells Fargo is an example, although they had a major setback recently, and they're in this area right here, but they had their logo. Can anybody remember what their logo is for Wells Fargo?
Isn't it the horses on that carriage?
Yep, the horse and carriage. And why don't they change that old logo?
It's been there forever.
Okay. And so they're showing off their tenure in business. So they're saying that if we've been around this long, we must be doing something right. And there's some truth to that. But when there's something that happens, and they were very quick to fix some of those things. There was something that was highly unethical that happened, I think it was last year at Wells Fargo. And there were a ton of people that were fired. So they went in to try and fix that very quickly. Because the perception, if that's there, then people won't do business with you, or they won't trust you. So personally, it's hard to get to that place, but by finding good research, by using your emotions in a responsible way, and doing this consistently over time, that's how you create this. So that's what we do on our end. Now the other side to morals, I'm going to bring in a very an ancient scholar here, Dewey in 1909. He talked a lot. He had a lot of essays, a lot of work. He was a philosopher and an academic. And he basically specialized in morals and moral codes and the responsibility that we had. And this is perfect for this type of a class. The responsibilities that we had as people as we move out into the world. And his focus was on education. And it's perfect because that's basically what you're being trained to do in this class. In information and in persuasion. You're learning how to develop your ideas in a way that you're taking out to the world. And we're just trying it out in a small way with these assignments. But as you move out to the world, you're going to be using these skills in different places. So he believed, and he wrote a lot of essays about how as a society in education, what we're doing is we're maturing as a whole. And it was like a social group where we're maturing and we help each other with that. And looking closely at morals, when you look at any piece of information, in it by itself, it doesn't mean anything. So, one of his examples was math. Math doesn't mean anything in itself. It's inert. And that is what they call non-moral. Okay, argument strategies, bringing this into this classroom. They're non-moral. They don't mean anything. They're just strategies. Okay, and everything that you're learning here, they don't mean anything. But what we're looking at is the intent of how they're being used, and that's where we're getting into the ethics, and that's how we're getting into our morals. So, looking deeply at the intent of yourself and others can help you as you move forward. In not only developing your own persuasive strategies and moving out to the world, but also in understanding others. So, morality is wanting the good for the whole, basically. And that's what Dewey was talking about, is raising others up as a group to the good of the whole. And immoral is the opposite. It doesn't mean that two people that have differing opinions, that one is moral and one's immoral. That's not what we're talking about. But we're talking about the intent of what's going to happen with the group. And that is more detailed than what your book talks about morality, about ethics, that you can take with you just outside of this class. You can start looking around in the world. So remember, just because people have different viewpoints, it doesn't mean that their intention is to bring down the whole group. I think we forget that when people have different points of view. Okay, now on that heavy topic, what I'd like you to do is take a moment and write any additional details that you have for your argument strategies. And then think about what it is with your topic that can bring the group up to be better. Any kind of a group that you talk to. So it'd be this one that we're focusing on right here.